Well, I just got back from seeing Megalopolis, and boy oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Let's get into it.
Don't let the now destroy the forever.
Okay, so I have been on quite the journey in the lead up to this film. Dune Part 2 was my most anticipated film of the year, and then when I started hearing reactions out of Cannes and I had seen Dune Part 2, Megalopolis had quickly become the new most anticipated film for the rest of the year. Up until this year, I'd never seen a Francis Ford Coppola movie, and I needed to rectify that. So I explored all of his best work from Apocalypse Now, the Godfather Trilogy, and Bram Stoker's Dracula. And I felt like I had started to get a good grip on the way that Coppola made films in the peak of his career. And seeing a documentary like Hearts of Darkness provided even further context to the way that Coppola just gives everything into whatever he's trying to make. And it's something that I can easily respect about him. Sometimes, in the right light, if it's a huge success like Apocalypse Now, it looks like an absolute genius move where you think, how did this not get supported more? But then you have Megalopolis, which has had a lot of negative buzz surrounding it, from allegations to an attempted cancel moment of Francis Ford Coppola, and then hearing that this is going to make not a lot of money, which is pretty easy to anticipate for the type of film this is. And you're suddenly looking at this being seen as a real disastrous move from Coppola, who spent up to $120 million of his own money to fund this project, a passion project that he had in his mind for roughly 30 years. All of that just made me so excited. The fact that he's giving so much to this vision. The trailers to me looked really impressive. I love a lot of the people in this cast. Adam Driver, in particular, I think is the best working actor today. I just think he's phenomenal in everything he does. And Coppola, out of filmmakers from that era in the 70s, the 80s and so on, he is one of my favorite filmmakers. I think his approach to filmmaking, the stylistic choices, the way that his films are written are so profound and impactful, and they hold up so well today. And my preconceived notion going into Megalopolis was me thinking that maybe the film was ahead of its time. You know, there are so many films like that where the ideas just aren't accepted in the time that they're made, but later on, 20, 30 years down the line, we realize that these films were incredible and have later gone on to become classics. And there are so many people that really hate this movie and really love this movie. It's no surprise that this film is divisive, and me saying that is not a controversial statement. So whatever I say, my opinion on this movie, someone is going to disagree with me, and that's perfectly fine, because this film is not for everybody. I don't even know if it's for me. And coming out of this film, I just don't fucking know. I don't know whether I love this or I hate this, because there is a lot of both of these elements in this film where I think it's genius one minute and the dumbest shit I've ever seen the next. It manages to do both, and there is a lot to discuss here on both sides. So the film follows Caesar Catalina, played by Adam Driver, who is this visionary who has a real idealistic view of the world in the future and building a utopia, this megalopolis. And there are particular roadblocks in there, both politically and personally, and the film tries to explore a lot of these things as it progresses. And it does it in very messy fashion because it feels like Coppola is trying to cram in as many ideas as he possibly can within this dream project of his, which can sometimes be at its detriment. I truly think the best parts about this film are usually in the first half of this movie. There are some moments that really shine. There is a romance arc that I really liked. It completely talked to the aesthetic of the movie, which is very strange in of itself. Sometimes it looks like bad CGI, but sometimes it looks like a real purposeful stylistic choice, making it feel like a fantasy or a musical without song and dance numbers. And there are some scenes in this film that look so beautiful and showcase just the visual creativity of a Coppola film. I really loved some of these sequences. There's these ones where they're just overlooking the skyline, and if you look at it just on a technical scope, it can be seen as bad CGI, but there's something about the lighting and the framing that makes it look like a clear stylistic choice. Now, this is not me just blindly defending it, because there is some awful CGI in this movie that looks downright disgusting and horrible. It looks like something from The Room or just any film that has terrible visual effects. There are moments where you see a crowd that is clearly being done in CGI because they look like NPCs in NBA 2K in the crowd or something, where they just have like 2 or 3 animations and it looks so silly. However, I think with the romance angle, it really shines in both that aesthetic and having a heart and connecting us with these characters. I think Caesar in particular has something that you can connect with, but when it's going off in different directions, it's really hard to get involved with these characters and really stick by them, because it's going off in all these different directions. You know what the fuck is going on some of the time. And this film is one that I think requires a few watches to really get a grasp of and to truly understand if it's something brilliant or something really silly. Natalie Emanuel is the other person that's on the other side of this relationship arc, and I think she is also one of the better performers in this film. She plays off Adam Driver really well, and to see the arc of her character was quite interesting, and I did like the way that Coppola framed this character to work alongside this genius character of Caesar Catalina. There is also a lot of surrealism in this movie that I quite liked, and this goes a lot into some pretty decent visual storytelling that I quite enjoyed. Things like statues moving that you see in the trailer. There is some symbolism there that I do enjoy. I wish it hammered it home a little bit more than what it did, but just to see these moments felt really interesting and was just an innovative way of telling this story. There is an elongated sequence where it's just a sensory overload experience for about 20 minutes. It's going off in all these different directions. And the film does explain to you why. I don't want to go into detail, but it is visually quite impressive, even if it goes on for too long, because it's just saying the same thing over and over and over again. But it is an interesting sequence that has some nice revelations and just some forward thinking. It plays with some concepts that I think are really in the time now, with some discussions that we're having about technology that were very interesting. And I wanted Coppola to dive into that a lot more than what he did, because there's some other things in this movie that I think just don't need to be there, that could have been utilized in another film. But once again, Coppola wants to cram in like 30 ideas here, and it just feels so jumbled that it can't fully communicate what it's trying to say, and it makes it a little tricky to keep up with. And a lot of the audience that I saw this with just disregarded this film completely, because it does go into some very stupid territory, and I'm not going to defend that. The third act I thought was just pretty bad, and it almost let the whole film down entirely, because it just goes into this really campy, silly direction that makes it turn into an unintentional comedy. And the way that it finishes these arcs did feel quite unsatisfying and really rushed, which is strange for a 2 hour and 20 minute film. But it feels like it is trying to tell this story and have it unravel in a very natural kind of way, even though it is cramming a lot into the film. And then it just quickly tries to resolve everything without setting things up properly. And as I said, it does leave a bit of a bad taste in your mouth as you start getting to the end of the film. It just felt like Coppola his head was getting too big here. He had complete creative freedom, and for some filmmakers, that can be a blessing, but for others, it can be a curse. Some filmmakers need an adaptation, or they need something to go off, or some kind of restraint to truly showcase their brilliance. And Coppola, with this complete unrelenting freedom, is a little bit reckless with what he's trying to do. And it makes for an interesting film. I would rather have a billion of these over a Disney remake any day of the week, because there's a lot to discuss here that's so interesting and makes me so passionate and excited about film. I love Coppola's style, but there's some shit in here that's just so stupid that you just can't believe what he's doing here. It feels like something that just needed a little bit more tinkering, maybe writing another draft of the script, because there's just some ideas here that just didn't need to be done. And there are some things in here that are really gimmicky. Things that you have probably heard over Twitter and so on. This sequence where someone from the audience comes and speaks to Caesar was very gimmicky. It didn't need to be in the film. It felt very underwhelming. There was no real reason for it. It's just there to be there. And sure, it was quite interesting and felt like a spectacle. But there's also a part of it that did feel like elementary theatre school, because it's just thrown in there for no reason at all. I liked the idea of it, and I think if it had more context behind why it was there, it would be a really brilliant and inspired creative decision. But in this film, it does not pull it off quite the right way. And because of that, it did feel a little bit disappointing, to be honest, especially after all the build-up that one particular sequence got. I think some of the characters that I didn't appreciate as much were Shia LaBeouf's character, who is set up to be this antagonist, who does have his moments, but it's just so inconsistent once again. And then you also have Aubrey Plaza as Wow Platinum. What a name, by the way. She is interesting, and I do like why she is in the film, and her motivations are very clear. But where it all goes, once again, feels quite disappointing, and it leads to just some really awkward and comedic scenes. I mean, my audience was roaring with laughter, and I don't think it was trying to be a comedy. Another character that I will talk about that I quite enjoyed was Giancarlo Esposito. He is in the film a lot more than what I thought he would be, but he is just really excellent in this film. I mean, he's great in pretty much whatever he does. He's such a great actor. And there are some sequences where he is playing off Adam Driver, and you have these two electric actors working with each other, and it just makes for some great moments on the screen. I really enjoyed a lot of the sequences with these two characters, and I think this is where the film needed to draw its focus into the romance arc, because it is tied directly into the arc with Giancarlo Esposito. And if we just focused on that alongside these ideas of a utopia and all these ideas coming together and all these people from all these different walks of life coming together and talking, being harmonious and building a brighter future, I love that idea. And I think you have a masterpiece in Megalopolis. But as I said, Coppola gets in his way so frequently within this film that it can be frustrating. I want to love this with all of my heart, and in some respects, I still did really enjoy this. I think, from my perspective, I think it's great enough for me to watch it again and watch it again another time, because there's just so many ideas here that I find interesting. There are concepts in here that are decently enough explored, and you do have some great, some comedic, some stupid scenes. It's all mixed together, but no matter what, whether you love this or hate this film, it has so much personality to it, and that is so enticing to me. There's moments in here that are really exciting, and I just love that in film, to branch off and try different things, be creative. If it falls flat on its face, it falls flat on its face, but that's the beauty of art. You have something that dares to be different, that tries to be unique. And I think just because it doesn't pull it off all of the time and is quite stupid, it is still special. And I am glad that Megalopolis exists. And I think it deserves some level of support. I think even if you don't enjoy this film, you will have fun with it, because there's a lot of people comparing this to The Room, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you, because there are moments that do feel like that. There's some CGI here that looks awful. There's some staging that is awful that makes you wonder, is this the same Francis Ford Coppola that directed The Godfather, or someone entirely, because this doesn't feel like him? And all of this mixed together leaves me very confused, But I did enjoy my time with this film. And as I said, I'd watch it again. I'd buy this on Blu-ray. I don't give a shit. And if you disagree with me enjoying the film, that's a you problem. You don't like the movie, you don't like the movie. I'm not going to disagree with you. That's your perspective. And I understand why. But for me, it was great. I love films that dare to be different. And this is what this is. So as a score, I'm going to give Megalopolis a 4 out of 5. I do think I'm being very generous here. But there's just a lot about this that compels me. It's fun to talk about this movie. I had such a great discussion with my fiance after this screening. And not many movies can trigger a full-length, in-depth discussion like what we had. And that's special in film when it can do that. And Megalopolis does pull that off. No matter the quirks, no matter the special ideas, it all comes together. It all makes this perfectly unique package that is at least interesting. And those are my thoughts towards Megalopolis. If you've seen this movie, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I think everyone's going to be divided here. But hey, this thing is just a different beast. And I'd love to hear why you hate this movie, why you enjoy this movie. Because I think it's all fun and games. I think we can all have a lot of fun with this movie on either side of the coin. And I just can't wait to hear your thoughts. So let me know in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.